All right, welcome back. Glad you're here. Okay, did you meditate this morning for 5 minutes? If not, go do it. It will bless your life. Just 5 minutes, okay? And also, did you write down three things? I can't talk this morning. Three things you're grateful for. It's good to program your mind. There's so much research that talks about when we are aware and when we're grateful, more positive opportunities come. We're able to do better things. So go try it out. You got to do the work or it won't work for you. You won't progress. You've got to believe and then you got to take the action and then the growth comes. And did you let your crazy roommate of a brain just say stuff and let it go? If not, that's okay. If so, good job. Like, keep it up. It will help you. How about your anti-talent show? How's that going? How's your yo-yo or Rubik's Cube or shooting or whatever? You should be about ready to present. That doesn't mean you're perfect, but the idea is that you've gotten better at it, okay? It'll just prove you can learn. It will prove you can grow. Now, today we're going to talk about goals, and we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to tell you two stories, and I'm going to let you draw your own conclusions about why we set goals and why goals are so important, okay? They're going to have to do with teeth-bearing baboons, box jellyfish, and your own personal goals. So if you want to see what baboons, jellyfish, and your goals have to do with one another, stick around. I'm Dr. Nathan Palai. This is Speed Tribe, and we'll help you out. Now, like I said, I'm just going to tell you stories. They're going to seem a little bit weird, but I think you're smart enough to figure out what they have to do with each other. I'm actually going to trust you to come up with the conclusions. So be ready. By the end of today, your assignment is going to be to tell me what these stories have to do with goals and why goals are important. Got it? Okay. So we're going to start with a story about my friend. He grew up in the 80s, deer hunting with his dad, his uncles, and his cousins. They'd all pile up into one truck, his uncle at the steering wheel, his dad in the passenger seat, and him and all the cousins back in the back of the truck. Safety third. It's a different time. It's the 80s. But my friend, he knew that if his uncle was driving, you had to find a tight corner and hang on. Because his uncle relied on one thing and one thing only to get over the rocks, the bumps, and the mud bogs, and that was momentum. And it worked. It might jostle the fillings right out of your teeth, but you got through the mud pit. And over, the mantra was the same with his dad and uncles. It was this: if you stop, you're stuck. If you stop, you're stuck. So years later, my friend's actually living in a small African country called Swaziland. And one day, he and a group of friends decide to drive off through the wilderness. Think like a safari, but 19 and 20-year-olds just driving themselves around instead of having an official guide. I know, sounds pretty safe. They drove all around, saw all sorts of wildlife, and then they came to a fork in the road. One road led to the park exit, and the other road, at the bottom, there was literally a sign that said, "Warning, difficult road, 4x4 only." Now, the little truck they had was not four-wheel drive, but they were young, adventurous, and it felt like they could make it, and so they started up the mountain. It's a difficult path, really full of obstacles, but with some careful tire placement, adrenaline, and a good bit of momentum, they were able to make it through all the obstacles. But they rounded a corner and they found a small, seemingly unimpressive section of mud. And so as they started to drive through the mud, it soon became apparent that this puddle was a lot deeper and the ground a lot softer than anticipated. And they didn't have enough momentum. And sure enough, the truck came grinding to a halt right in the middle of nowhere, tires spinning in the mud, and he could just hear his dad's voice say, "If you stop, you're stuck." So they tried for 20 or 30 minutes to push the truck, rocking it back and forth, pushing with all their strength. It wasn't budging. They were stuck. So there they were, deep in the African wilderness, and it was about to get worse. Through the trees a ways off, they started to hear a commotion, loud screeking sounds that rang out. And what they saw is a troop of angry baboons coming at them. They approached, formed a half circle around them, and they started to display behavior that can only be described as terrifying. Screaming loudly, barking, throwing rocks and sticks, displaying their huge white fangs, and their eyes were just like huge watching these baboons coming to attack. They're like, we're stuck in the middle of this African savanna and we're going to die. So realizing they were in trouble, the four guys said a prayer. They acted and gave it one final push. They pushed with all their strength, and it turns out the fear of being dismembered by a troop of wild baboons in the middle of the savannah is pretty good motivation. Combined with that, with what they said was surely divine intervention, and to their surprise and great relief, the truck lunged forward and broke free of the mud. Forward momentum was restored. They got back to safety, all their limbs intact. If you stop, you're stuck. So here's my question for you. And I'm not going to give you the answer. Why set goals? What does this story teach us about goals? What do goals do for us? You got the message? Lock it away. I'm going to have you write it down at the end. I'm going to tell you one more story. In fact, I'm going to let that person tell you this story. I'm going to show you a little video. You can watch it here on my laptop. It'll be rather small. Or we'll have the link. You can just pull up the video and you can fast forward to this video to the end. And see your challenge. Either way, it's great. It's a woman named Diana Nyad. And just check out why we set goals. Okay? All right, here we go. In her own words, TED Talk. Boom. Okay? Watch it here, watch it in the clip. Either way, it's fine.
Years ago, I was turning 60, and I don't like being 60. And I started grappling with this existential angst of what little I had done with my life. It wasn't the resume of, breaking this record here. It was more like, who would I become? How had I spent my valuable time? How could this have gone by like lightning? And I couldn't forgive myself for the countless hours I had lost in negative thought. All the time I had spent beating myself up for losing my marriage and not stopping the sexual abuse when I was a kid. And career moves and this and this and this. Just why? Why didn't I do it better? Why? And then my mother died at 82. And so I'm starting thinking, not only am I not happy with the past, now I'm getting choked with, I've only got 22 years left. What am I going to do with this short amount of time that's just fleeting, and I'm not in the present whatsoever? And I decided the remedy to all this malaise was going to be for me to chase an elevated dream, an extreme dream, something that would require utter conviction and unwavering passion. Something that would make me be my best self in every aspect of my life, every minute of every day. Because the dream was so big that I couldn't get there without that kind of behavior and that kind of conviction. And I decided it was an old dream, it was lingering, it was from so many years ago, 3 decades ago. The only sort of world-class swim I had tried and failed at back in my 20s was going from Cuba to Florida. It was deep in my imagination. No one's ever done it without a shark cage. It's daunting. It's more than 100 miles across a difficult passage of ocean. It's probably at my speed, at my age, for anybody's speed at anybody's age, going to take 60, maybe 70 hours of continuous swimming, never getting out on the boat. And I started to train. I hadn't swum for 31 years, not a stroke. And I had kept in good shape, but swimming's a whole different animal. Matter of fact, this picture is supposed to be me during training. It's a smiling face. And when you're training for this sport, you are not smiling. It's an arduous, difficult sport, and I don't remember smiling at any time during this sport. as I said, I respect other sports, and I compare this sport sometimes to cycling and to mountain climbing and other of the expedition type events, but this is a sensory deprivation, a physical duress. And when I started in with the 8 hours and the 10 hours and the 12 hours and the 14 hours and the 15 hours and the 24-hour swims, I knew I had it, because I was making it through these. And when I said I'm going to go out and do a 15-hour swim, and we're coming into the dock after a long day, and it's now night, and we come in and it's 14 hours and 58 minutes, and I can touch the dock and we're done, the trainer says, yeah, it's great, it's 14 hours, 58 minutes, who cares, the last 2 minutes? I say, no, it's got to be 15 hours, and I swim another minute out and another minute back to make the 15 hours, and I put together an expedition. It's not that I didn't have help, but honestly, I was the team leader, and to get the government permissions, you think you read in the paper, it's so easy to get into Cuba every day? Try going in with an armada like we had of 50 people and 5 boats and CNN's crew, etc. The navigation is difficult. There's a big river called the Gulf Stream that runs across here, and it's not going in the direction you are. It's going to the east, and you'd like to go north. It's tricky, and there's dehydration, and there's hypothermia, and there are sharks, and there are all kinds of problems, and I gathered together, honestly, the world's leading experts in every possible way, and a month ago, the 23rd of September, I stood on that shore and I looked across to that long, long, faraway horizon, and I asked myself, do you have it? Are your shoulders ready? And they were. They were prepared. No stone left unturned. Was the mind ready? You know, you're swimming with the fogged goggles. You're swimming at 60 strokes a minute, so you're never really focused on anything. You don't see well. You've got tight bathing caps over your ears, trying to keep the heat of the head, so that's where the hypothermia starts. And so you don't hear very well. You're really left alone with your own thoughts. And I had all kinds of counting systems ready there in English, followed by German, followed by Spanish, followed by French. You save the French for last. And I had songs, I had a playlist in my head, it's not through headphones, in my own head, of 65 songs. And I couldn't wait to get into the dark in the middle of the night, because that's when Neil Young comes out. And it's odd, isn't it? You think you'd be singing Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah out in the majesty of the ocean, not songs about heroin addiction in New York City. But no, for some reason, I couldn't wait to get into the dark of the night and be singing, I heard you knocking at my cellar door. I love you, baby, and I want some more. Oh, the damage done. The night before I started, I finished Stephen Hawking, The Grand Design. And I couldn't wait to trip the mind fantastic. About the 50th hour, I was going to start thinking about the edge of the universe. Is there an edge? Is this an envelope we're living inside of, or no? Does it go on to infinity in both time and space? And there's nothing like swimming for 50 hours in the ocean that gets you thinking about things like this. I couldn't wait to prove the athlete I am, that nobody else in the world can do this swim, and I knew I could do it. And when I jumped into that water, I yelled in my mother's French, courage, and I started swimming, and oh my God, it was glassy, and we knew it. All 50 people on the boats, we all knew this was it. This was our time. And I reminded myself a couple hours in, you know, the sport is sort of a microcosm of life itself. First of all, you're going to hit obstacles. And even though you're feeling great at any one moment, don't take it for granted. Be ready, because there's going to be pain. There's going to be suffering. It's not going to feel this good all the way across. And I was thinking of the hypothermia and maybe some shoulder pain and, all the other things, the vomiting that comes from being in the salt water. You're immersed in a liquid that your body doesn't like the salt water. After a couple of days, 3 days, you tend to, rebel in a lot of physical ways. But no, 2 hours in, wham, never in my life. I knew there were Portuguese men of war, all kinds of moon jellies, all kinds of things, but the box jellyfish from the southern oceans is not supposed to be in these waters. And I was on fire, excruciating pain. I don't know if you can still see the red line here and up the arm. Evidently, a piece this big of tentacle has 100,000 little barbs on it. And each barb is not just stinging your skin, it's sending a venom. The most venomous animal that lives in the ocean is the box jellyfish. And every one of those barbs is sending that venom into the central nervous system. So first, I feel like boiling hot oil I've been dipped in, and I'm yelling out, fire, 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 help me, somebody help me. And the next thing is paralysis. I feel it in the back, and then I feel it in the chest up here, and I can't breathe. And now I'm not swimming with a nice long stroke. I'm sort of crabbing it this way. Then come convulsions. Young man on our boat is an EMT. He dives in to try to help me. He's stung. They drag him out on the boat, and he's evidently, I didn't see any of this, but lying on the boat and giving himself epinephrine shots and crying out. He's 29 years old, very well built, lean. He's 6'5", weighs 265 pounds, and he is down. And he's crying, and he's yelling to my trainer who's trying to help me. And he's saying, Bonnie, I think I'm going to die. My breath is down to 3 breaths a minute. I need help, and I can't help Diana. So that was at 8 o'clock at night. The medical team from University of Miami arrived at 5 in the morning. So I swam through the night, and at dawn, they got there, and they started with prednisone shots. I didn't get out, but it was in the water, taking prednisone shots, taking Xanax, oxygen to the face. It was like an ICU unit in the water. And I guess the story is that even Navy SEALs who are stung by the box jelly, they're done. They either die or they quickly get to a hospital. And I swam through the night, and I swam through the next day. And the next night at dusk, again, wham, the box jelly again, all across the neck, all across here. And this time, I don't like it. I didn't want to give in to it, but there's a difference between a nonstop swim and a staged swim. And I gave in to the stage swim, and they got me out, and they started again with the epinephrine and with the prednisone and with the oxygen and everything they had on board, and I got back in. And I swam through that night and into the next day, and at 41 hours, this body couldn't make it. The devastation of those stings had taken the respiratory system down so that I couldn't make the progress I wanted. And the dream was crushed. And how odd is this intelligent person who put this together and got all these world experts together. And I knew about the jellyfish, but I was sort of cavalier. A lot of athletes have this, sort of invincibility, they should worry about me. I don't worry about them. I'll just swim right through them. We've got Benadryl on board. If I get stung, I'll just grin and bear it. Well, there's no grin and bearing this. As a matter of fact, the best advice I got was from an elementary school class in the Caribbean. And I was telling these kids, 120 of them, they were all in the school, the gymnasium floor, and I was telling them about the jellyfish and how they're gelatinous and they're, you can't see them at night especially, and they have these long 30 to 40 to 50 foot tentacles, and they do this wrapping, and they can send the poison into the system. And a little kid from the back was like this, and I said, what's your name? Henry. Henry, what's your question? He said, well, I didn't have a question so much as I had a suggestion. He said, you know those guys who really believe in what they believe in, and so they wear bombs? And I said, well, it's odd that you've learned of this as a noble kind of pursuit, but yeah, I know those guys. He said, that's what you need. You need like a school of fish. that would swim in front of you like this. And when the jellyfish come and they wrap their tentacles around the fish, they're going to be busy with them, and you'll just scoot around. I said, oh, it's like a suicide army. He said, that's what I'm talking about. That's what you need. And little did I know that you should listen to 8-year-olds. And so I started that swim in a bathing suit like normal, and no joke, this is it. It came from the shark divers. I finished the swim like this. I was swimming with this thing on. That's how scared of the jellyfish I was. So now what do? I wouldn't mind if every one of you came up on this stage tonight and told us how you've gotten over the big disappointments of your lives. Because we've all had them, haven't we? We've all had heartache. And so my journey now is to find some sort of grace in the face of this defeat. And I can look at the journey, not just the destination. I can feel proud. I can stand here in front of you tonight and say I was courageous. Yeah. Thank you. And with all sincerity, I can say I'm glad I lived those 2 years of my life that way, because my goal to not suffer regrets anymore, I got there with that goal. When you live that way, when you live with that kind of passion, there's no time. There's no time for regrets. You're just moving forward. And I want to live every day, the rest of my life that way, swim or no swim. But the difference in accepting this particular defeat is that sometimes if cancer has won, if there is death and we have no choice, then grace and acceptance are necessary. But that ocean's still there. This hope is still alive. And I don't want to be the crazy woman who does it for years and years and years and tries and fails and tries and fails and tries and fails, but I can swim from Cuba to Florida, and I will swim from Cuba to Florida. Thank you. Thank you.
Dude, how fun is she? Fantastic, right? Now, here's my question, and I'm really going to leave it to you. I want you to draw some conclusions here about why we set goals. And I know she didn't make it. Just put a pin in that. We'll come back to that idea. Trust me, it's good. But here's my question. Why goals? I want you to grab your sports psych journal, and I want you to answer that question. Why do we set goals? And then number 2, this is important. What do you want? What is your big dream? What would you like to happen? In sports, maybe in life, maybe have a couple of them. But what is your dream? What is your big goal? And then right below that, for each one of those big dreams or big goals, why? What is it about that dream that is attractive to you? What do you hope happens because of that? Why is that exciting to you? Okay, that's it. Why goals? What do you want? And why do you want them? Think about it. And if you want somebody to talk to about these goals, apply for coaching. We'd love to talk you through the process. I'm excited for you. Good things happen. Believe, take action, and you'll see this growth. You'll work towards these goals, and amazing things will happen. Best wishes. Thanks for running with the tribe. See you next time.